Sarah Martinez had always been different from her classmates at Riverside High School. While other students spent their weekends at parties or hanging out at the mall, she could be found in the school library, buried deep in books about aviation history and military strategy. Her thick-rimmed glasses and quiet demeanor made her an easy target for the popular crowd, who nicknamed her the Ghost because she seemed to disappear into the background whenever possible. The teasing had started early in her freshman year. Jessica Reynolds, the head cheerleader whose father owned the largest car dealership in town, had made it her personal mission to remind Sarah of her place in the social hierarchy. "Look at little Sarah," Jessica would whisper loud enough for everyone to hear, probably dreaming about flying away from here because nobody wants her around. The comment would always be followed by cruel laughter from her followers. Sarah's home life wasn't much easier. Her mother, Maria, worked double shifts at the local diner to make ends meet after Sarah's father had abandoned them when she was 12. The small apartment they shared in the less affluent part of town was a constant reminder of their financial struggles. Sarah wore the same 3 outfits to school in rotation, carefully washing and pressing them each night to maintain some semblance of pride. Despite the challenges, Sarah found solace in her secret passion. Every day after school, she would ride her beaten-up bicycle to the old airfield on the outskirts of town. The abandoned runway had been closed for years, but she would sit on the cracked concrete and watch military planes practice maneuvers in the distant sky. She had taught herself to identify different aircraft models and could predict flight patterns with remarkable accuracy. Her guidance counselor, Mrs. Patterson, had noticed Sarah's exceptional grades in mathematics and science. During their mandatory college planning meeting, she suggested that Sarah consider applying for academic scholarships. "You have the potential to go anywhere you want," Mrs. Patterson had told her. But Sarah had already made up her mind about her future, though she kept those plans to herself. The mockery reached its peak during senior year. Sarah had been selected as valedictorian, which only intensified the resentment from her classmates. "Probably because she has no life outside of studying," Marcus Thompson, the quarterback, had commented during lunch. "What's she going to do with all that book knowledge anyway? End up like her mom serving coffee for the rest of her life?" Sarah endured the comments in silence, but, inside, her determination burned brighter than ever. She had been quietly working toward a goal that none of them could imagine. Every spare moment was spent preparing for what she knew would be the most challenging endeavor of her life. She practiced physical fitness routines in her small bedroom, studied flight manuals she had ordered online with money saved from her part-time job at the grocery store, and maintained the perfect grades that would be essential for her plans. The final insult came just weeks before graduation. During the senior awards ceremony, as Sarah walked across the stage to receive her academic honors, someone from the audience shouted, "Don't break, fragile girl." The comment was followed by snickers from several students. Sarah's face burned with embarrassment, but she maintained her composure and accepted her awards with dignity. That evening, Sarah sat in her room with acceptance letters spread across her desk. She had been offered full scholarships to several prestigious universities, opportunities that would have thrilled any other student. But next to these letters lay another document that meant more to her than anything else, an acceptance letter that represented her true calling and her chance to prove everyone wrong. Her mother knocked softly on the door and entered with a cup of hot chocolate. "Mija, I'm so proud of you," Maria said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Your father would be amazed to see how strong and smart you've become." Sarah looked up at her mother's tired but loving face and made a decision that would change everything. "Mom, I need to tell you something," Sarah began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. "I'm not going to accept any of these college scholarships." Maria's eyes widened in confusion and concern. Sarah took a deep breath and continued, "I've been accepted to the United States Air Force Academy. I'm going to become a pilot." The room fell silent except for the distant sound of traffic outside their apartment window. Maria stared at her daughter, processing this unexpected revelation. Sarah had never mentioned anything about the military, let alone becoming a pilot. The quiet girl who seemed so fragile to everyone else had been harboring dreams of soaring through the skies and serving her country. "But, Sarah, flying jets, that's so dangerous," Maria whispered, her voice filled with worry. "And you've never even been on a plane." Sarah smiled gently at her mother's concern and pulled out a folder she had kept hidden in her desk drawer. Inside were printed articles about female pilots, photos of military aircraft, and handwritten notes about flight training requirements. "I've been preparing for this since I was 15, Mom. This is what I want to do with my life. I want to serve my country and prove that strength comes in many forms," Sarah explained. "Those kids at school think they know who I am, but they have no idea what I'm capable of achieving." As graduation day approached, Sarah kept her plans secret from everyone except her mother and Mrs. Patterson, who had helped her with the academy application process. She watched her classmates make their post-graduation announcements, some heading to state universities, others taking gap years or starting jobs at local businesses. None of them suspected that the quiet girl they had tormented for 4 years was about to embark on a journey that would transform her into something they could never imagine. Graduation day arrived with all the pomp and ceremony that Riverside High could muster. The gymnasium was decorated with blue and gold streamers, and proud parents filled every available seat. Sarah sat in the front row with her fellow honor students, wearing her simple black dress and the same shoes she had worn to every school dance she never attended. Her mother sat in the audience, beaming with pride despite her concerns about Sarah's future plans. As the ceremony began, Sarah noticed the usual whispers and pointing from her classmates. Jessica Reynolds, resplendent in her designer dress and professional makeup, leaned over to her friends and made another snide comment that Sarah chose to ignore. The mockery had become such a constant presence in her life that she had learned to tune it out, focusing instead on her inner strength and determination. When Sarah's name was called as valedictorian, she walked confidently to the podium. The gymnasium fell quiet as she adjusted the microphone and looked out at the sea of faces before her. Some looked genuinely interested in what she had to say, while others wore expressions of barely concealed boredom or amusement. Her speech was carefully crafted, speaking about perseverance, the value of education, and the importance of pursuing one's dreams despite obstacles. She talked about how challenges shape character and how true strength often comes from unexpected places. As she spoke, Sarah's voice grew stronger and more confident, commanding the attention of everyone present. "Today marks not just the end of our high school journey, but the beginning of who we will become," Sarah declared, her words echoing through the gymnasium. "Some of us will follow traditional paths, and others will choose roads less traveled. Whatever path we choose, remember that our worth is not determined by others' opinions but by our own actions and achievements." The applause that followed was polite but genuine. As Sarah returned to her seat, she caught her mother's eye in the audience and saw tears of pride streaming down Maria's weathered face. Mrs. Patterson, sitting with the other faculty members, nodded approvingly at her former students' words. After the ceremony, families gathered in the parking lot for photos and celebrations. Sarah's moment was interrupted when Jessica and her group approached with their typical superiority. "Great speech, Sarah," Jessica said with false sweetness, "very inspiring for someone who's probably never going to leave this town anyway." Her friends giggled at the comment. Marcus joined the group, still wearing his graduation cap tilted at what he thought was a cool angle. "So what's next for our little bookworm? Community college? Maybe taking over your mom's shifts at the diner?" The group erupted in laughter at his comment, drawing attention from nearby families. Sarah looked at them calmly, feeling no anger or hurt for perhaps the first time in years. She knew something they didn't, and that knowledge filled her with a quiet confidence that no amount of mockery could shake. "Actually," she said with a small smile, "I have other plans." "But, thank you for your concern." "Other plans?" Jessica pressed, sensing there was more to the story. "What kind of other plans could you possibly have?" The question was asked with such condescension that several parents nearby frowned at the girl's rudeness. Sarah paused for a moment, considering whether to reveal her secret. Part of her wanted to shock them with the truth, but a larger part understood that her actions would speak louder than any words ever could. "I guess you'll just have to wait and see," she replied, then walked away to find her mother. The summer after graduation passed quietly for Sarah. While her former classmates posted constant updates on social media about their summer jobs, college preparations, or gap year adventures, Sarah seemed to vanish from their radar completely. Those who bothered to think about her at all assumed she was working at her mother's diner or preparing for community college classes. In reality, Sarah was undergoing the most intense preparation of her life. She had received detailed instructions from the Air Force Academy about the physical and mental conditioning required before her arrival. Every morning at 5 a.m., she ran through the streets of her neighborhood, gradually building up her endurance and strength. She studied military protocol, memorized chain of command structures, and practiced military bearing. Her transformation was remarkable but largely unnoticed by her former classmates, who had little reason to venture into her part of town. The shy, quiet girl was developing muscle tone, improving her posture, and gaining a confidence that came from knowing she was working towards something meaningful. Mrs. Patterson stopped by the diner one afternoon to check on Sarah's progress. "How are you feeling about your departure?" she asked over coffee. Sarah's eyes lit up as she described her preparations and her excitement about beginning this new chapter of her life. "I never imagined one of my students would choose such a challenging path," Mrs. Patterson admitted. "But, if anyone can succeed at the Air Force Academy, it's you. You have the discipline and determination that many people never develop." As summer drew to a close, Sarah made her final preparations. She had sold most of her possessions, keeping only essential items and a few meaningful mementos. Her mother helped her pack the single duffel bag that would contain everything she was allowed to bring to the academy. The night before her departure, Sarah and her mother sat together in their small living room, both lost in thought about the changes ahead. "I'm going to miss you so much," Maria whispered, holding her daughter's hand. "But I'm also so proud of the woman you've become and the woman you're going to be." Sarah hugged her mother tightly, knowing that this goodbye marked the end of one life and the beginning of another. Tomorrow, she would board a plane for Colorado Springs, leaving behind the small town that had never understood her potential. She would enter a world where her intellectual gifts would be valued, where her determination would be tested and strengthened, and where she would learn to soar in ways her tormentors could never imagine. Early the next morning, as Sarah's taxi pulled away from the apartment complex, she didn't look back. She was focused entirely on the future and the challenges that awaited her. Behind her, the town continued its sleepy routine, unaware that one of its own was about to embark on a journey that would transform her into something extraordinary. The United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced. The massive stone buildings stretched toward the mountains, and the sight of uniformed cadets moving with precision and purpose filled her with both excitement and nervousness. As her plane had descended into Colorado Springs Airport, Sarah had pressed her face to the window, watching the landscape transform from the flat plains of her hometown to the dramatic peaks of the Rocky Mountains. Processing day was a whirlwind of activity that left little time for homesickness or doubt. Sarah found herself surrounded by young people from every corner of the country, all equally overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they had undertaken. The confident suburban kids who had been class presidents and star athletes suddenly looked just as uncertain as she felt. The upperclassmen who processed the new cadets were intimidating figures in their crisp uniforms and military bearing. They shouted instructions with precision and demanded immediate compliance. Sarah watched some of her fellow new cadets struggle with the intensity, but she found herself adapting more quickly than she had expected. Years of enduring harassment at school had taught her to remain calm under pressure and follow instructions without complaint. Her roommate was Jennifer Walsh from Boston, a confident young woman whose father was a retired Navy officer. Jennifer had grown up surrounded by military protocol and seemed to navigate the academy environment with natural ease. "You're from Colorado?" Jennifer asked during one of their brief moments of downtime. "No, actually I'm from Kansas," Sarah replied, carefully arranging her few possessions in the regulation manner. "Small town called Riverside. You probably never heard of it." Jennifer nodded politely, but Sarah could sense the slight surprise in her voice when she mentioned her humble origins. The academic coursework at the academy was more challenging than anything Sarah had encountered, but her years of disciplined study served her well. While some cadets struggled with the engineering and mathematics requirements, Sarah excelled, often finishing assignments ahead of schedule and helping her struggling classmates during study sessions. Physical training was more difficult for her initially. The daily runs, obstacle courses, and strength training pushed her body to its limits. During those first weeks, Sarah would collapse into bed each night with aching muscles and blistered feet. But, gradually, her body adapted and strengthened. The quiet girl who had once been called fragile was developing the lean, strong physique of an athlete. Military training presented its own challenges. Learning to march in formation, handle weapons, and respond to commands with split-second timing required a level of physical coordination that didn't come naturally to Sarah. She spent extra hours practicing drill movements in her spare time, determined not to fall behind her classmates. The most significant challenge came during survival training, when cadets were tested on their ability to navigate difficult terrain and overcome physical obstacles. Sarah found herself paired with David Chen, a cadet from California whose athletic background made him a natural leader in physical challenges. During a particularly difficult rock climbing exercise, Sarah struggled to maintain her grip on the artificial climbing wall. Below her, she could hear whispered comments from other cadets about her perceived weakness. "She's never going to make it through flight training if she can't handle basic physical challenges," someone muttered. David, who was belaying her rope, called up encouragingly, "You've got this, Martinez. Don't listen to them. Focus on the next handhold." His support gave Sarah the motivation she needed to push through her fear and complete the climb successfully. That evening, as cadets reflected on the day's training, Sarah realized she was facing the same type of doubt and criticism she had endured in high school, but in a much more demanding environment. The difference was that here, her fellow cadets were also being challenged and tested. The playing field was more level than it had ever been in her life. Flight training began in her second year, and this was where Sarah truly began to shine. Her mathematical mind grasped the principles of aerodynamics and navigation with remarkable speed. During ground school, she consistently scored at the top of her class on written examinations covering everything from weather patterns to emergency procedures. When she first climbed into the cockpit of a T-6 Texan training aircraft, Sarah felt a sense of rightness that she had never experienced before. The complex array of instruments and controls that overwhelmed some students seemed logical and manageable to her. Her instructor, Captain Rodriguez, was impressed by her natural aptitude for aviation. "Martinez, you have an intuitive understanding of flight dynamics that takes most pilots years to develop," he told her after a particularly successful training session. "Have you had any previous flight experience?" Sarah smiled and shook her head, not mentioning the countless hours she had spent watching and studying aircraft from her perch at the abandoned airfield back home. Her progress through flight training was steady and impressive. While other cadets struggled with complex maneuvers or became overwhelmed by the mental workload of flying, Sarah seemed to have found her calling. She approached each training mission with meticulous preparation and calm focus, traits that served her well in the demanding environment of military aviation. During advanced training exercises, Sarah began to develop a reputation among her instructors for exceptional situational awareness and decision-making under pressure. In simulated emergency scenarios, she remained calm and methodical, working through problems with the logical approach that had served her well in academics. Her fellow cadets began to notice her emerging skills as well. David Chen, who had become a close friend during their time at the academy, often sought her help with flight-related coursework. "You make this stuff look easy," he commented while reviewing navigation procedures. "It's like you were born to fly." Jennifer, her roommate, was pursuing a career in space operations rather than piloting, but she watched Sarah's transformation with admiration. "I remember when you first arrived here, you seemed so quiet and uncertain," she observed. "Now you carry yourself like you own the sky." As Sarah progressed through her training, she began to dream of the day when she would return home as a commissioned officer and pilot. She imagined the surprised faces of her former classmates when they learned what the fragile student had accomplished. But, more than revenge or proving others wrong, she was motivated by a genuine desire to serve her country and push the boundaries of her own potential. The academy was transforming her in ways that went beyond physical fitness and technical skills. She was developing leadership qualities, learning to inspire and guide others, and discovering depths of courage and determination she never knew she possessed. The shy girl from Riverside was becoming someone entirely new, someone who would soon have the skills and authority to command respect in one of the most demanding professions in the world. By her final year at the Air Force Academy, Second Lieutenant Sarah Martinez had transformed into someone virtually unrecognizable from the quiet high school student who had left Riverside 4 years earlier. Her military bearing was impeccable, her academic record exemplary, and her flight training scores ranked her among the top 5% of her graduating class. She had grown taller, her posture straighter, and her once timid voice now carried the clear authority of a trained officer. The selection process for advanced pilot training was intensely competitive. Only the most exceptional graduates would be chosen for fighter aircraft programs, while others would be assigned to transport, reconnaissance, or support roles. Sarah's dream was to fly the F-16 Fighting Falcon, one of the most demanding and prestigious aircraft in the Air Force inventory. During her final evaluation flights, Sarah demonstrated the precise control and tactical thinking that separated exceptional pilots from merely competent ones. Her instructor, Colonel Williams, had flown combat missions in Iraq and Afghanistan and was known for his exacting standards. After her final check ride, he pulled her aside for a private conversation. "Martinez, in 20 years of training pilots, I've rarely seen someone with your combination of technical skill and tactical instinct," he told her. "You have the potential to become not just a pilot, but a true warrior aviator. I'm recommending you for the F-16 program at Luke Air Force Base." Sarah felt tears of joy welling up in her eyes but maintained her military composure. This recommendation meant everything to her. It represented validation of years of hard work and sacrifice, and the opportunity to join the elite ranks of fighter pilots. Meanwhile, back in Riverside, life had continued its predictable rhythm. Sarah's former classmates had scattered to various colleges and careers, but many still gathered during holiday breaks to share stories and catch up on local gossip. During these reunions, Sarah's name occasionally came up in conversation, but no one seemed to know what had become of the quiet valedictorian. Jessica Reynolds had graduated from a state university with a business degree and returned home to work at her father's car dealership. Marcus Thompson had played football for 2 years at a community college before a knee injury ended his athletic dreams. He now worked at a local insurance company and spent most evenings reliving his high school glory days at the town's only sports bar. Mrs. Patterson had retired from teaching but still kept in touch with many of her former students. She was one of the few people in town who knew about Sarah's military service, as Maria Martinez had sworn her to secrecy at Sarah's request. During casual conversations with other former faculty members, Mrs. Patterson would smile knowingly when Sarah's name came up, but she honored her promise to keep the secret. Sarah's mother had moved to a better apartment across town, funded by the steady allotment checks that Sarah sent home each month. Maria worked fewer hours now and had enrolled in night classes at the community college, pursuing a degree in early childhood education that she had always dreamed of earning. She displayed Sarah's academy graduation photo prominently on her mantelpiece but told neighbors and co-workers only that her daughter was serving in the military. At Luke Air Force Base in Arizona, Sarah excelled in F-16 training with the same determination that had carried her through the academy. The transition from training aircraft to flying a supersonic fighter jet was dramatic, but Sarah adapted quickly to the increased speed, power, and complexity. Her instructor pilots noted her exceptional ability to maintain situational awareness during high-stress scenarios and her natural talent for aerial combat tactics. During a particularly challenging training mission involving simulated air-to-air combat, Sarah demonstrated the quick thinking and aggressive flying style that marked her as a natural fighter pilot. Flying against an experienced instructor playing the role of an enemy aircraft, she executed a series of defensive maneuvers that put her in position for a simulated missile shot. "Excellent work, Martinez," her instructor radioed after the exercise concluded. "That was textbook defensive flying followed by a perfect offensive setup. You're thinking 3 moves ahead of your opponent." Sarah smiled inside her helmet, remembering how her chess club experience in high school had taught her the value of strategic thinking. After completing her initial F-16 training, Sarah received orders to join the 64th Aggressor Squadron at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. The aggressors were an elite unit that simulated enemy aircraft and tactics during advanced training exercises, flying against other Air Force units to provide realistic combat training. It was one of the most demanding and prestigious assignments available to a new fighter pilot. Sarah's reputation as an exceptional pilot grew rapidly within the squadron. Her attention to detail, precise flying skills, and ability to think tactically made her a formidable opponent during training exercises. Fellow pilots who had initially been skeptical of the young officer's abilities quickly learned to respect her skills. During a major training exercise involving multiple squadrons, Sarah was assigned to lead a four-ship flight of F-16s against a larger force of opposing aircraft. The mission required split-second timing, perfect coordination between aircraft, and aggressive tactical flying. As flight leader, Sarah had to make rapid decisions while managing radio communications, monitoring her wingmen, and engaging multiple targets. The exercise was a complete success, with Sarah's flight achieving all mission objectives while sustaining no simulated losses. After the debrief, the exercise commander, a veteran colonel with decades of fighter experience, pulled Sarah aside. "Lieutenant Martinez, that was some of the finest tactical flying I've seen from a new pilot," he told her. "You led that flight like a seasoned combat veteran. I'm putting you in for an early promotion recommendation and considering you for advanced leadership training." As Sarah's reputation grew, she began receiving invitations to participate in international training exercises and demonstration flights. Her flying skills had reached a level that brought attention from senior leadership throughout the Air Force. She was selected to participate in Red Flag exercises, the Air Force's premier combat training program, where she would fly against simulated threats representing the most advanced enemy capabilities. During her time off base, Sarah occasionally thought about her hometown and wondered what her former classmates were doing with their lives. She felt no bitterness toward those who had mocked her in high school, but she did wonder how they would react if they knew what the fragile student had accomplished. The opportunity to find out came sooner than she expected. Sarah received word that her mother was planning a surprise for her upcoming birthday, though Maria was characteristically vague about the details. She had no idea that her mother had been secretly planning something that would allow Sarah to return home in a way that would leave a lasting impression on everyone who had ever doubted her potential. Unknown to Sarah, Mrs. Patterson had approached Maria with an idea that would give her former student the recognition she deserved while also inspiring current students to pursue their dreams regardless of obstacles. The plan they developed would create a moment that no one in Riverside would ever forget, especially those who had once considered Sarah too fragile to amount to anything significant. The annual Riverside High School homecoming celebration was the biggest event in the small town's calendar. Alumni from decades past would return to reminisce, current students would showcase their achievements, and the entire community would gather to celebrate their shared history. This year's celebration was particularly special, as the school was commemorating its 70th anniversary with an expanded program of events and activities. Mrs. Patterson, now serving as the volunteer coordinator for the anniversary celebration, had convinced the school board to include a special presentation about alumni achievement and service. She had contacted Sarah's mother months earlier with a proposal that would honor Sarah's military service while inspiring current students to pursue challenging goals. Sarah had been granted special leave to attend the celebration, though she had been told only that her presence was requested for a community service recognition. She had no idea of the elaborate surprise that had been planned or the impact it would have on everyone who remembered the quiet, supposedly fragile girl from their graduating class. On the morning of the celebration, Sarah arrived in Riverside wearing her dress blue uniform, complete with the ribbons and insignia that marked her as an accomplished officer and pilot. Her mother met her at the small regional airport, and Maria could barely contain her excitement about the day's events. "Mija, you look so beautiful and strong," Maria said, hugging her daughter tightly. "I am so proud of the woman you have become." Sarah noticed her mother's unusual excitement but attributed it to their reunion after several months apart. The homecoming celebration was held at the school's football stadium, with temporary seating added to accommodate the large crowd expected for the anniversary event. As Sarah walked through the parking lot with her mother, she noticed several people doing double takes, clearly recognizing her but unable to reconcile the confident, uniformed officer with their memories of the shy high school student. Jessica Reynolds was among the first to spot Sarah, and her reaction was one of complete shock. The former cheerleader had put on weight since graduation and was struggling with a messy divorce from her college boyfriend. Seeing Sarah in military uniform, radiating confidence and authority, left her momentarily speechless. Marcus Thompson was working at the registration table when Sarah approached to check in for the event. His jaw dropped when he realized who was standing before him. The quiet girl he had mocked for her perceived weakness was now a decorated Air Force officer whose presence commanded immediate respect. "Sarah?" "Sarah Martinez," he stammered, struggling to reconcile his memories with reality. Wow, you're in the Air Force?" Sarah smiled politely and confirmed her identity, noting his obvious discomfort with quiet satisfaction. As the formal program began, Sarah took her assigned seat in the VIP section, still unaware of what was planned for later in the ceremony. The principal gave opening remarks about the school's history and the achievements of its alumni, building up to what he described as a very special presentation about service and achievement. Mrs. Patterson took the microphone and began speaking about the importance of supporting students' dreams, regardless of how unconventional those dreams might seem. She talked about the value of perseverance in the face of doubt and criticism, and the responsibility of educators to nurture potential wherever they found it. "Today, we have the privilege of recognizing one of our graduates who exemplifies these values," Mrs. Patterson announced. "Someone who was underestimated by many but who never underestimated herself. Please welcome back Second Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, United States Air Force, pilot and officer." Sarah walked to the podium amid surprised murmurs and scattered applause from the audience. Many people were clearly stunned by this revelation, having had no idea of her military service and achievements. She spoke briefly about her journey from Riverside to the Air Force Academy and her current role as a fighter pilot. "High school was not an easy time for me," Sarah acknowledged, her voice carrying clearly across the stadium. "But those challenges taught me that other people's opinions of your potential don't define what you can achieve. Every obstacle can become a stepping stone if you're willing to work hard enough and believe in yourself strongly enough." As Sarah concluded her remarks, Mrs. Patterson announced that there would be a special demonstration to conclude the program. "Lieutenant Martinez has arranged for a flyover by her squadron to honor our community and inspire our current students." The crowd looked up expectantly as the distant sound of jet engines became audible. Sarah checked her watch and smiled, knowing that her timing had been perfect. She had coordinated with her squadron commander to arrange this demonstration, calling in several favors to make it possible. 4 F-16 Fighting Falcons appeared on the horizon, flying in perfect diamond formation. As they approached the stadium, they descended to a lower altitude that allowed everyone to see the aircraft clearly and hear the full power of their engines. The lead aircraft was being flown by Sarah's wingman, who had volunteered to participate in this special homecoming demonstration. The formation flew directly over the stadium at precisely the planned time, their engines producing a thunderous roar that could be felt as well as heard. As they passed overhead, the aircraft executed a perfect four-ship break, with each plane peeling off in a different direction before climbing back into formation for a second pass. The crowd was absolutely stunned by the precision and power of the demonstration. Children pointed excitedly at the sky, adults applauded enthusiastically, and many people wiped away tears of emotion. The sight of modern fighter aircraft soaring overhead was unlike anything most of them had ever experienced. As the aircraft disappeared into the distance, Sarah returned to the microphone one final time. "Those aircraft represent the finest technology and training in the world," she said, "but they're only as good as the people who fly them. Never let anyone tell you that you're too fragile, too quiet, or too different to achieve great things. The sky is not the limit, it's just the beginning." The applause that followed was thunderous and sustained. Current students cheered with genuine enthusiasm, inspired by Sarah's message and awed by the demonstration they had witnessed. Alumni who had once dismissed her sat in stunned silence, forced to confront their own assumptions and biases. Jessica Reynolds found herself crying, overwhelmed by the recognition of how wrong she had been about Sarah and how much she had underestimated her former classmate. Marcus Thompson stared at the sky where the aircraft had been, shaking his head in disbelief at the transformation of the girl he had once called fragile. After the ceremony, Sarah was surrounded by current students eager to learn more about military service and aviation careers. She spent hours answering questions, sharing advice, and encouraging young people to pursue challenging goals regardless of obstacles. Several students expressed serious interest in military academies and aviation programs. As the celebration wound down, Sarah's former classmates approached her with a mixture of admiration and embarrassment. Many offered genuine apologies for their past behavior, recognizing how wrong their assumptions had been. Sarah accepted their apologies graciously, holding no grudges but hoping they would treat others more kindly in the future. That evening, Sarah and her mother sat together in their old apartment, looking through photos from the day's events. "Did you ever imagine this when you were sitting on that old runway watching planes?" Maria asked her daughter. Sarah smiled and shook her head. "I dreamed it, but I never imagined it would feel this good to prove everyone wrong, including myself. But the best part isn't showing off what I've accomplished. It's knowing that maybe some kid who feels different or fragile today will remember this and realize that they can achieve anything they set their mind to." As Sarah prepared to return to her squadron the next morning, she took one last look at the town that had shaped her early years. She felt grateful for both the challenges and the support she had received, knowing that everything had contributed to making her the person she had become. The engines of her fighter jet would soon carry her back to her military duties, but the memory of this homecoming would inspire her for years to come. The story of the fragile student who became a warrior aviator would be told in Riverside for generations, serving as a reminder that strength comes in many forms and that the quiet ones often have the loudest dreams.